Hey everybody, it's your friendly neighborhood Jerry Rasco here with you again, and today it is time for another amazing Spider-Man art retrospective video. Um, we have been cruising along with these issues of Spider-Man. Hopefully you've been following along here on the channel. If this is your first time jumping in, today we're going to be looking at an issue of Amazing Spider-Man. Today is issue number 22, and there is a playlist here on the channel that will show you all of the Amazing Spider-Man videos that I have up for you to check out, going all the way back to Amazing Fantasy number 15. So thank you to everybody who has been following, all the subscribers, all the folks who have been watching the videos, everybody who's been commenting. You guys, your support has really made this project that started out, I wasn't sure how it was going to go, but it's been fantastic and really inspiring me to keep going. I can't wait. I'm looking forward. There's some real big milestones coming up in the upcoming weeks with these Spider-Man videos, and I can't wait to share them with you. So they do come out, these videos come out every Monday at 8 a.m. So again, think about subscribing to the channel if you're not already, and you can click the notification bell, and that way you'll see when these the next Amazing Spider-Man retrospective video comes out, and you can check it out yourself. So that being said, let's get into today's issue. Okay, so here we have the cover for the Amazing Spider-Man number 22. I do say this in every video, so I apologize to you longtime subscribers, but to new folks, this is a PDF scanned copy of an original comic. That's why you see all of the lines and the wear and tear on the cover. Likewise, if you were to look up this cover, say, on a Google search or, on the internet, you'll find a much brighter version. Over time, it has darkened, the ink has changed, and some of it is the scan. But the cool part about this is the original comic, and you will see it in all its glory, including things like, the advertisements, things like that. So if there's misprints or typos or anything crazy that got past editorial, we'll see those as well. So it's really kind of cool to see what the comic would have looked like, as opposed to a reprint where sometimes they'll go ahead and tweak things, make little changes. So I really prefer this whenever possible. We have the cover here. We have another return of some villains. Again, right now with these Spider-Man issues, we're still seeing a kind of two things. We either see like this, a villain that Spidey has faced off and has returned. In this case, a group of villains that Spidey has faced off against and returned. Or you're seeing the intro of a brand new villain. That's the main kind of rhythm that we're into in the storytelling here. And this one's no exception. So we've got the Circus of Crime. Now, interesting, they don't refer to them that way. So today, readers, if you go and you look at things like the Marvel Handbook, that shows you all the characters and stuff, these guys are referred to as the Circus of Crime. However, here they're called the Masters of Menace, and that's actually part of the story. They use that term, but obviously it doesn't stick. The Circus of Crime is much more apropos and kind of sticks around longer. Just in terms of the visuals here, I like this idea of criminals being intimidated by the spider signal that he sends out from his belt, which is really cool. I think that's a really neat idea. However, I have some questions about the application here, or how the execution of this. So what I mean is, this is a big red light source. I know with coloring from that time, from the 60s, we weren't able to have cast red lighting on the figures. That's okay. But it is a light source. So realistically, their shadows should be kind of behind them, which sort of works here. There's not a lot of shadows on the figures, but the ones that are do kind of go in the opposite direction of this, which is fine. But then this is obviously Spider-Man. You can see the webbing under his arms. And so that means there's a super strong light behind Spider-Man casting that shadow. So there's two big light sources, and I don't know that it would work this way. It works from a storytelling perspective for sure. The menacing Spider-Man shadow, and then the symbol is cool. But I don't know if, like I said, the execution of the lighting works the way I'd like. But sometimes this is one of the truths of comics for sure. Sometimes you have to do stuff that's cool as opposed to correct. So again, I don't know that the lighting would work right this way, but it does look very cool. I did say as well, I thought that the figures of the circus were very small here. I think there's a lot of space here, and there's not as much copy or word balloons and stuff on the cover as we normally might see. I feel like you could bring the Spidey logo down, maybe even if it's partially underneath this block here, it's still very recognizable. And we could have made the villains bigger to give them more presence in terms of them sort of cowering away or being in fear of Spidey. That's just my thoughts. So let's see. We get back into the book here, and we open with that, a classic splash page, and showing here the circus and Spidey. I said that it's good, but I said for as far as splash pages go, I said it's dull. That's what I put in my notes, dull. The reason I say that is it's drawn very much like if you were to cut each of these figures out, the Ringmaster, Princess Python, etc., they look like a character model sheet, right? Like this is a drawing you would give someone to say, this is how you draw Princess Python. This is how her costume works. Things like that. I understand that maybe from a story perspective, he doesn't want to show them fighting. I don't know why you wouldn't. There's other things that happen here in the issue that could make a pretty good splash page. I don't know if it was just doing it this way, again, as just a very simple way to reintroduce the characters in case people forgot. But you will see there's a reference later as to what issue these guys first showed up. It's only been like 6 issues ago. So I don't know. Maybe it's just an intro. But again, to use an entire page when you could have something really action and exciting seemed like a little bit of a disappointment in my opinion. Again, here we got the Clown and the Masters of Menace, which again just doesn't really stick for very long. Alrighty, so we open up and there's the circus, and they're meeting up because I guess they're going to start planning whatever they're going to do next. But before they even get to, Spidey swings in and kind of warns them like, "Hey, don't mess around with stuff." From a story perspective, I said this is weird. Like how, they're talking about they served their terms in prison from the last time, which was Spidey number 16. So again, it's only 6 issues ago. But why was Spidey watching them? How did he know they were there? What made him, so he swings in and he puts the spider tracer in the Ringmaster's hat so he can keep tabs on him. I don't have a problem with it, but I think what I'm missing is, it's like there's a page or two before this that I'm missing, which is, the Circus of Crime gets out of jail. Spidey or Peter maybe reads about it, or he hears about it at the Daily Bugle, and he's like, man, you know what? I'm tired of dealing with, these criminals coming back and coming after me. For once, I'm going to be the aggressor. I'm going to go after them. So I feel like we're missing that piece of the story there. We'll see. Maybe it comes in later, but so far, as a reader, it just seems a little weird. I do like the use of the spider tracer as one of Spidey's gimmicks. Between the webbing, the light that we saw, the spotlight, his camera, and the tracers. We don't see them that often. We haven't seen a lot of them at this point in the series, and it's kind of a shame because it's a cool, unique gadget that a lot of other superheroes don't have. Let's see. Oh yeah, so I'm referring back to my notes. I really liked panels. What did I say? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. So these panels 7 and 8, I thought were really, really good. I liked these. This panel here is really good as well. Again, I like the idea of the foreground framing. So Spidey, talking to the ringmaster. You can always put them like this, or like on this page where they're kind of this medium shot and they're face to face. But here, putting one character's face in the foreground of the frame, and then Spidey in the window behind, helps really create depth in that field, which is a really nice touch. And then tossing the hat, same idea, right? Spidey is still the emphasis of this panel, and you could draw him as the main figure, the largest piece, and then have him throwing the hat. But doing it from this view, I feel like is just a really nice change of pace. And then him leaping away and swinging away is a good pose, of course, of classic juxtaposition, or I think it's called, is it contrapposta? I think that's the right word, something to that effect, where you're taking the limbs of a figure and putting them in opposite directions. And what I mean is, right, so Spidey's right leg is forward, his right arm is down back, his left arm is forward, his left leg is back. So it's this counter posing of the limbs on a figure, makes for more action and more dynamic poses. So overall, pretty good page from an art perspective. I like it. I did want to note here as well, I've talked about this in other videos. You'll hear me say that a lot. Steve Ditko is amazing at drawing his different characters with different faces. That's not always the case. Not every artist can do that. So what I mean by that, and we'll see it later, I'll show you an example pretty soon. But so this is Princess Python, and he has drawn Princess Python to be bad. How do we know she's bad? There are subtle things. The arch to her eyebrows. She has a thinner face as opposed to a more possibly rounded girlish face, where you can see the cheekbones here very tight. And then the heavily lidded eyes with the very thick eyelashes, as opposed to what we'll see later, where some of the women have more large eyes. And it's subtle things like that make all the difference in the world, to really emphasize that she is bad. And so she is trying to manipulate things. She's the one that comes in and tells them that the ringmaster is a bad leader, he's no good, and she thinks the clown should be the one in charge. And everybody agrees. So they have a little tussle, and the ringmaster is gone. I did note this. So Peter, everybody's getting ready to leave. Peter, of course, is engrossed in what he's reading here, and he's talking about Dr. Henry Pym. The new biochemical discoveries of Dr. Henry Pym. So if you're not a Marvel fan, I don't know what you're doing here, but hopefully you know Dr. Henry Pym is also known as Ant-Man, later Giant Man, Yellow Jacket, but obviously a guy who has invented the ability to change his size, right? So Peter is talking about that. So I thought that's a nice little nod to somebody who is also a scientific superhero. And in his own way, Spidey is a scientific superhero. We see Spidey using his scientific knowledge for obviously everything from his web shooters to solutions that he comes up with to help defeat his foes. So really good stuff there. And then here's the example I want to give. So this is Betty Brant. And of course, there's this sort of understanding or misunderstanding all the time between Betty, who Peter considers his gal, even though she has been hanging out with a reporter named Ned Leeds. So there's this on again, off again with Betty and Peter. But the point is, look at the difference in how she is drawn. So again, there's no lines on the face cutting into like the cheekbones or things like that. So she's got a younger, slightly fuller face. The eyebrows are arched, but not nearly as severely as Princess Python. And the eyes are much bigger. Yes, there are the dark eyelashes, but look how big the eyes themselves are by comparison. So I'm just going to go back real quick and show you what I'm talking about here. So look at the difference. So we have, again, like here especially, she's looking off to the side through those eyes. You can see the heavy eyelids, the cheekbones, those much more severe eyebrows. That all emphasizes, even her smoking as part of her character, that all emphasizes the fact that she is bad. She's a bad person. She's a bad girl. Whereas Betty is certainly younger and more innocent. So great small subtle things, but stuff to think about. Especially so if you're listening to this and you are an artist, if you're a newer artist or somebody who's trying to figure out how to be a comic book artist, for sure you definitely want to take those kinds of things into consideration. I do want to point out one small thing, which I don't know. I'm going to call it, I'll chalk it up to a coloring error, possibly, but it might fall between both Steve Ditko, the artist, and the colorist. So here in this panel, excuse me, where Betty and Peter run into each other, it's clear, extremely clear, she's wearing gloves. We can see the seams on the gloves between the fingers. There's a cuff. She's clearly wearing gloves. Now, when we go to the next panel, she is not. Her hands are colored flesh tone. Same here. Now they're holding, they're kind of holding hands here, or she's holding onto Peter's arm. It doesn't appear that she's wearing gloves. So did the colorist just not color the hands white here? Well, here's part of my problem. You see the glove and it has a little cuff, and then you see the green of her jacket. There's no cuff of the glove to indicate it's a glove. You could say that maybe between panels she took off the gloves, but the pacing of this is so quick that I don't think there is that time. I think it's just an error, that maybe this was a very small panel, so Steve didn't draw the extra little detail of the cuff of the glove per se, and then the colorist, just not seeing gloves, just colored it pink. Her hands should have been white to stay in continuity, or the easiest thing is just don't draw her with gloves. I don't know why she would be wearing gloves, but so be it. So anyway, just thought I'd point that out. And then there's a foot joke here. So there's J. Jonah Jameson is putting up an art gallery display, thinking it's gonna make him a bunch of money, and there's this old couple in the background talking about or looking at stuff, and there's this little foot. There's an artist here standing there. There's somebody looking at it. You can see the figure behind the panel. It says, "Boy, I wish I could draw feet like that." And there's this image of a foot with a toe coming out of a sock. So it goes to show you that the joke of comic book artists don't draw feet has been going on since the 60s. Right? Usually when you see Spider-Man, his foot is just sort of a shape. We don't really draw a lot of feet. Figures are cut off before you see the feet. I've heard there's a famous quote of somebody, I don't remember exactly who to attribute it to, but somebody said one time, it was like, listen, we ain't getting paid to draw feet, right? In terms of like, if you're a comic book artist, you're getting paid to draw Spidey. You're getting paid to draw action. You ain't getting paid to draw the most amazing feat of all time. So anyway, I thought this was very funny. And these foot jokes continue all the way into the Marvel Cinematic Universe today. If you have seen the Deadpool movies, There are jokes in both Deadpool 2 and Deadpool 3 about the artist who created Deadpool not being able to draw feet, and that's the joke. So, yeah. So we know that this goes way back. Let's see here. So the circus comes in. They're going to rob the gallery, of course. Decent stuff, nothing crazy. Again, we're talking about our multi-panel page pacing. We talk about that in pretty much every issue. So when things get exciting, you're going to see more panels quicker, back to back to back. You're not going to see as many big panels that are just going to slow things down. We want that pace to be moving quickly. I did like this. So Jonah gets injured, and Betty is very upset, and then after Spidey brings her home, he takes off. And to me, I suppose you could say, I read this as he's running down the building, which I think is really, really cool. And I say that because the background is a blue. There's no indication of street, road, cars, anything like that. It's the same color as the sky here. So I think, I don't know for sure, I don't think it's identified whether Betty lives in a house or an apartment, but maybe she lives in an apartment. He drops her off, and then he runs down the side of the building after he changes. I think that is really cool. Great perspective on this and foreshortening. So you have the perspective of the buildings. As the buildings go away from our eye, they get smaller to a single point. So you could trace all these lines back to a single point, which is back here somewhere. And then you have Spidey coming at us, and I mean, his finger, the middle finger of his hand, which is the closest part to us, if you took and measured it, is basically almost the same, size, length of his head, because that's that much closer to us. And then the foot in the back. This is an excellent figure, bent over. Great use of the foreshortening and the anatomy to make a really cool picture of Spidey running down a building at us. So he knows the circus is there, so he is going to track down the ringmaster, and he's still using this gadget that he built to track his spider tracers. Spoilers, but eventually over time he modifies them so he can just use his spider sense to track his tracers. But at this point, he's still using this electronic gimmick. And so when he has to do it, he wears it, you'll see here, around his neck as he's looking. Let's see here. Oh, yeah. So these are good. Nothing super crazy here. He's swinging around trying to track down that tracer. And what he finds out is he doesn't know that the ringmaster is not part of the circus anymore. They've thrown him out. So he's tracking a guy who didn't commit the crime. And this guy he got picked up for questioning by the police. So it takes Spidey to the police station. I really like this panel here. So you've got a couple of things going on here in panel 6. Again, I like that foreground element so that we, the reader, can really get that feeling of depth in the panel. It's very simple. You've got your wall, you've got Spidey's fingers, and everything that overlaps is a different layer, right? So that's what gives us the depth. So you have a foreground layer. This comes over the top. Spidey is essentially in the midground, and even he is overlapping himself. This hand is in front of his leg. The front of his leg is in front of the thigh, etc. His head is slightly over his shoulders and chest. And then a couple simple little buildings out in the back creates that depth that helps identify what's going on in the panel. Then the last piece of it that I like is the angle. So we've talked about this in other comics as well. You call it a Dutch angle. So normally you think of when you're drawing comics, you think of everything in terms of a camera. We talk about camera, where you're going to put the camera, the moves, etc. Essentially, the viewer's eyes are the camera. And so where are you going to move the image around? Because you can't move my eyes, right? So we're going to, instead of moving the camera, I'm going to move the image. And one of the things you can do to really help create more dynamic imagery is what's called the Dutch angle. So instead of your camera always being perfectly perpendicular to essentially the ground or your horizon, you take it and you turn it 30 degrees, 40 degrees, something to that effect, one way or the other. And it just adds an element that creates interest and drama in your picture. And anytime you can use it, it is a great idea to do so. This is a perfect example of a place where Dutch angle really makes sense. The buildings aren't leaning, but it just helps move things, create drama, and to move our eye through the panel. Let's see here. Just again, looking at my notes. So Spidey is going to give the ringmaster here a little taste of his own medicine. So it's pretty interesting. He sneaks in and grabs his hat, and he's going to hypnotize the ringmaster with his own hat. And I like this. This is a little bit of business here. So what I mean by business is you can always draw things the way they would be in real life. So what I mean by that is if you're going to grab a hat, you would use your hand. Maybe he would grab it by the brim. Maybe he would use two hands and grab it around the top of the I don't know what you call it, the top hat part, the stove stack part of the top hat. But instead, this is Spider-Man. So what does he do to be, sneaky and quiet? He just uses the suction powers, the sticky powers of his fingertips to just touch the top of it, and he can grab stuff. That's another thing that, again, Spidey can do that other superheroes can't do, but as well, like, it just adds a real cool use of his powers that it's just part of his nature. He doesn't have to really think about it. It's just what he does. And I thought that was really, really cool. And again, a simple element of the storytelling. I guarantee you it wasn't in the plot. So when we were going through this, if you could look at a script, there was nothing that said, Spidey reaches out, grabs the top of the hat with his fingertips, and lifts it. This is Steve Ditko going, if I'm Spider-Man, how would I quietly grab this hat? I would just go bloop and pull it up. So great plan. I really like that a lot. So Spidey then figures out where they are after hypnotizing the ringmaster and goes after the Circus of Crime. And here we get into what I refer to as classic Ditko fight scene pace and movement from beat to beat. Exactly what we've come here for, what we love to see. We start off with this big panel, which is terrific. That way you've got the entire space set up. You've got all the characters in play. So you know kind of where everybody is located, where they're coming from. Great stuff. And now we start to literally bounce from foe to foe, from move to move. So Spidey comes down on his webs and uses them just like these trapeze or the rings there, the acrobat rings, to spin around and get out of the way of the villains. So as he's spinning, then he gets hit by the ball. He uses his momentum to flip over and use it to attack people. He gets tripped up and then backflips kind of out of it, but he does get hit. And again, this is one of those things where, we've talked about it, and I did talk about it some as well with my friend Nick. Nick is a great contributor here on the channel and to these Spider-Man videos. He is an amazing Marvel historian and knows a ton, not just about Marvel history, but specifically Spidey and Steve Ditko and these early comics. His knowledge is unbelievable. I did a live stream chat with him a few weeks back. Definitely check that out here on the channel. But this makes me wonder, there are a lot of times in these kinds of fights and battles where Spidey is clearly getting hit. He's getting struck, and there could be a dialogue about something, right? Oof, ow, that smarts, or man, oh, he tagged me, or got to watch out, got to be more careful, something. And it's like when Stan Lee does the dialogue, so that's how Steve draws it. And then as Stan Lee writes the dialogue, it's like he kind of downplays that a lot. Unless it's clearly obvious, like this one where he's getting tackled, chest first. There's not much he can do about that one. Or he's hooked here with the clown's cane. But there's a lot of these where Spidey gets punched as he's flipping or diving out of the way. And it seems to be very underplayed. And I think this is part of the Marvel method of one person is drawing the action based on a general story idea, and then Stan comes in and is writing the dialogue, and sometimes the two don't match up exactly, which of course is one of the biggest things that led to, the fallout and the breakup between Stan and several artists, not just Steve Ditko eventually, but Jack Kirby as well, right? And we actually saw that happen down the road with other artist-writer pairs like John Byrne and Chris Claremont, or in X-Men or things like that, where, the artist is drawing one thing and the writer writes something different, and then things get, the relationship gets tense and then eventually doesn't work. But that is neither here nor there. Again, just kind of interesting that Spidey is getting hit but doesn't really mention it too much. And then they're tossing him around, the acrobats here, but of course Spidey is probably more acrobatic than the acrobats, so not really a problem. And then, but it's always that, there's always somebody else coming. So he's dealing with these guys on the rings here, only to get hooked by the clown, pulled right down into this charging tackle. Great. I love it. I really like this sequence. I think the word, the sound effect of womb as he's getting hit in the chest like that is perfect. The reaction of him, where the hands are, the leg getting splayed out, perfect. I mean, it looks just like somebody being tackled, a good tackle in a football. It's unbelievable. But he manages to keep going, slide away, and keep fighting. So here, now this makes sense. These guys are both punching at him, but they miss. And the sound effects tell us there's a whoosh, there's a whip, and there's no, with the motion of their hand, there's no indication like there was back here of him being struck. So this makes sense. And then Princess Python gets in, and this is too funny. So one, it emphasizes the fact that Spidey's not a very big guy. We've seen him being drawn slightly more muscular compared to, like, Spider-Man number 1, 2, the early issues. But here, Princess Python is basically as tall as Spider-Man. And she's kind of bent, and she's grabbing onto his arms. And now he could break away easily. She doesn't have super strength or anything like that. But she's simply using the fact that she's a woman, and he's, he can't hit a woman. So that won't last. Eventually, Spidey will get over that. But that's what she's betting on. But I just find it interesting that, you forget Spidey he's a high school student. Peter is never been identified as a particularly big guy. He's not Captain America, who stands, over 6 feet tall. He's not Thor, who's like 6'6". Spidey is probably, a 5'10", real average height, weight kind of guy, which is one of the reasons why it makes so sense. He could be anybody under the mask, because he is, very average height, average weight, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, thought that was very interesting. I think if you did this today, they'd have a tendency to draw him more of like, that 6'1" kind of height, where he would be much taller than her. Now she could be a very tall woman at the same time, but again, just an interesting visual reminder that Spidey, he's not a superhero. He's not powerful because he's a giant. He's massive. He is a young man. Let's see. We've got more about J. Jonah Jameson. He's got like a concussion basically, and he's just knocked out. He'll be okay. Here's another example of Betty and how big those eyes are. Again, going back to comparing with, Princess Python, a much rounder, more innocent face. Let's see here. Interesting action here where this is a way to do things, again, in comics where you can't, it's not like film, things don't move, it's static. So you have to show action. And if you really want to show very fast, like step-by-step action, this is one way to do it, which is basically you take your composition and you keep the exact same composition panel to panel, but you change one element. So first they piled onto him. He punches one guy. He punches another guy. He punches the third guy. And now he's left one-on-one. And so this really emphasizes, second to second almost. This is, again, with a few more frames of this, you could turn this into a little flip book or a small film reel and showing actual action. And then down here, he finally takes care of this guy. He tries to charge him again, and Spidey's like, all right, enough is enough. And he bonks him on the head. And you see when Spidey lets go and really wants to, how strong he is, right? Just by thumping down, he crushes this guy's metal helmet. And then knocks him out. And then great turn here, right? So we've been very kind of long shot, long to mid shot. You see the whole figure, so it's kind of a long shot. Mid shot, where you see most of the figure, but it's cut off, above the knee. Same here, mid shot. Closer, but still not a super close up. Even this isn't a super close up. This could all be much larger if you want to do close up. And then pulling out again. And now we do close up, where he's turning, because the only one left is Princess Python, and he's got to grab her. So real nice use on the end of the page of a close-up to kind of put a button point on that sequence. And then again, you just see the difference in how Princess Python is drawn, and she's trying to woo Spider-Man to let her go, or maybe, hey, why don't you join up with me? You and I, we don't need the rest of these yo-yos. You and I are really where it's at. And of course, Spidey's like, you're crazy. I'm not falling for it. But you see how she's drawn, again, with the higher cheekbones, the eyebrows, the heavily lidded eyes with the very long eyelashes. Again, we'll come back. Here's Betty. So you see the difference. Her eyes are much larger. Her lips are a little more small, which you would call more like a bow, where her mouth is a little bit broader, the lips more emphasized. And continuing the story here, she's still trying to woo him, and then at the last second, it's like, haha, I'll unmask you, and I'll know your secret identity, so you'll have to do what I say. And he breaks away and gets the mask on. Now, the thing I love about this is, what if she did look at him? How would she know who Peter Parker is? Right? That it's New York City. He's just a guy with brown hair. He's like a 17-year-old, 18-year-old kid. You couldn't pick him out of a lineup. Are you kidding me? There's no way she would be able to see his face and then go, hey, I know everybody. You guess who Spider-Man is? But that's okay. I just think it's so hilarious that there's this idea that in these early comics, if somebody pulled his mask off, they'd immediately know who he is. Great use of, again, framing of the hands here. So she's got this, like, essentially an electric cattle prod that she's kind of zapping at him. And again, you could do it in a bunch of ways. You could do it to where the two of them are side by side, facing each other, and she's zapping at him. But using the hands in the foreground to frame the action of her coming at him with the electricity. It emphasizes the danger. It makes you feel, the reader, like, how would you feel if somebody was pointing a cattle prod at you? You would, raise your hands up. So makes a lot of sense, and very, very good use of those elements here in that panel. I like that one a lot. And then she corrals him to her giant python. Now, we know today, again, it's so much easier for artists. We could go to Google and you could type in Python and you could get a reference for a python. And you'd be able to actually draw a very accurate python. Back then, it would have been a matter of looking it up in a book, maybe an encyclopedia or something like a National Geographic. So this isn't the most accurate python, but the reality is it doesn't matter. It's just a big snake. It's perfectly fine. And we get the idea. And great action and motion here. Terrific stuff. I love the way that he leaps to get control of that head so that the head can't bite him. And then as the snake is writhing around and twisting and turning, great imagery that Steve has drawn here with the scales and the larger scales on the belly. But the snake is always twisting, turning, trying to wrap him up, which is great. And Spidey is, of course, using that to his advantage to essentially tie the python in a knot on itself. And now it's got to work its way free. But terrific drawing. I basically, drawing anything curving like that where it's rope, string, a snake, Dr. Octopus's arms, whatever, where it's twisting and turning. That is always interesting visually, but also difficult to draw to make sure you're doing it right. So you've really got to trace that through. And then you have to do where the bends are, the direction of things like scales and stuff are going to change, or the direction of the scales on the stomach where they turn to get to create it in to create form so that it's not flat, it's a rounded tube basically. Those are going to change direction based on the curvature of the snake. So great stuff there. Really good work, and really good imagery. I like it a lot. This picture right here, this one where he's kind of leaping around through, is terrific. These are all really great Spidey images. Let's see here. As I put, my notes, incredible snake fight. And then Jonah's okay. Peter shows him the pictures that he's gotten. Jonah's like, "This is great. Come on, we got to go back to the paper, and we're gonna put out an extra edition about the new, this whole thing. Let's go." So he grabs Betty and Peter and takes them away back to the Bugle. So Peter is late. He didn't have a chance to phone his Aunt May and tell her he was going to be late, and she's mad at him. And of course he's stammering and like, "Well, how do I explain it? Oh, what am I going to do?" And I'm like, this is the one time he has a legitimate excuse. Like, she knew he went to this art exhibit for work, and then all he has to do is go, "Oh my gosh, I was at the art exhibit, and these people came in and tried to rob the paintings, and I managed to get a bunch of really great photos, and J. Jonah Jameson kept me back at the Bugle to help with, printing out this extra edition that he wanted." So he has a legitimate excuse, has nothing. He keeps Spider-Man out of it completely. And there you go, Aunt May. But what's his excuse this time? And there's where we end on this lovely little long shot of the Parker residence in Queens. And there's your issue. So that's Amazing Spider-Man number 22. Spidey takes on what I refer to as the Circus of Crime. They do, in the issue, they mention the fact they want to be called something, and they pick the Masters of Menace, which, as I mentioned, does not stick around. They're definitely more referred to as the Circus of Crime at this point. Not a bad issue. There's a lot of action in it. A lot of Spidey action with a little bit of sort of love triangle stuff thrown in there, a little bit of his personal life, but definitely more action than not, which is nice. Overall, not my favorite. If I was going to rate this on a 1 to 10, I'd say this is maybe a 6. I've never been a big fan of the Circus of Crime as a legitimate, villain. Nobody's really scared of him. Spidey handles him fairly easily. He doesn't have to, it's not like the first time he meets the Scorpion and he's got to regroup and because he gets beat, or, the Sandman beats him and now he's got to figure out a way to fight the Sandman, maybe using his scientific knowledge. This is just a straight up, he finally catches up to him, beats him up, captures him, and that's all there is to it. But that's okay. Hey, any issue of Spidey is better than no issue of Spidey, and we'll get together again next week, and we will look at the next issue number 23. We'll see. Maybe that'll be a more exciting issue or something that I like a little better. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have, again, don't forget to subscribe. Click the notifications so that you're aware every Monday morning when these new Spidey videos come out. In the meantime, we'll see you again soon for another art retrospective video. Thank you so much.